don't involve the politics will definitely involve you. People who tell me they don't do politics, I'm sorry, politics is doing them right now. That's why, because they're not paying attention. So, we worked on some marijuana reform, got a ballot measure started. It was unsuccessful. But what we did do is wake up a public in Arizona that was looking for some grassroots activism about grass, right? We also had somebody that was very good at social media, Dave Wisniewski. We had Robert Clark, who has this tremendous history and witness as a defendant's advocate and a patient's advocate. And so we were trying to cover all the bases that we could think of when it came to marijuana reform. The big task, though, for us in 2013 and 14 was were we going to get a ballot measure that was successful. Now, I was running for Congress, and I was talking to our state representatives. And at the end of 2014, well, in June of 14, I said, we really got to pull the plug on our petition drive because we're not there. And they said, well, what should we do? I said, well, MPP, this national organization, is probably our only bet. And so from this point out, I want to figure out how to work to advance marijuana reform and get them on our side and work on their side. Arizona, and if you talk to people, there's a lot of evidence on this. Arizona, many Arizonans have a bad taste in their mouth from the way that this campaign went in 2010, or problems that they have with the laws. And so I felt like we need to overcome that and unite behind something that we could like. And if we didn't have, if it didn't say what we wanted from the beginning, we become active to push it to say what we wanted. This became very important, this attitude, in February of this year, when the ongoing crisis of drafting finally came to a head, and for about a month, grow rights were cut out of the draft by MPP. We had to fight tooth and nail to get those back in there, and we succeeded with that. But by the time this was all done, there was a lot of ill will over the whole process. People who haven't seen sausage really don't like the way it's made. And you may be willing to eat sausage, but laws are pretty difficult. So we had a split in Arizona's. That thing. Yeah. We had a split in the activist community at the beginning of June of this month. By this point, I've now been working for 5 years on marijuana reform. I've been working over a year trying to align my efforts and the efforts of the people I could encourage to advance MPP's ballot measure. And so I've continued to do that as a volunteer, working wherever I can. In fact, if you haven't signed, there they are. I have all sorts of counties, folks. And that's my introduction into the community. That's why I'm here. Now, that put aside, I mentioned 2 of the multiple ballot measures. Right now, there's 6 that I can keep count of. There may be a 7th. I hear people referring to 7, but I only know of 6. 5 having to do directly with marijuana, and 1 having to do with hemp. The first one filed was the one having to do with hemp. It's called Hemp Our World, and it's specifically looking to legalize hemp and have it regulated like any other agricultural product. They have a set up for monitoring the production of hemp. For clarification, hemp is defined, industrial hemp is defined as cannabis sativa that has very low THC, in fact 0.3% THC or less. So you can't use it to get high, unless you like climb a rope, because hemp is great for making rope. Maybe get to the top of the mountain, that's a different kind of high. This, yes, for about 25 years, I was a political humorist, so if I end up saying something, you think, that's really weird, did he mean that to be funny? Yes, I did. Okay, this campaign, it was created by a couple of brothers, Carrasco brothers, out of the Gilbert area. They had brought in a national strength campaign manager, but they hadn't gotten any legs under the funding. and they were not able to align with the political support that they were pursuing in the past. I haven't heard much from their campaign lately, so I'm going to move on to another. The second and third marijuana-related, if you think of hemp as marijuana-related, initiatives were brought by a group called RAD, which is Re-Legalize All Drugs. This organizer, Mickey Jones, has been a loud, vocal and loud are the same word, activist in this community, talking about pure libertarian philosophy of really all drugs should be legalized. Remove restrictions and have people govern themselves. They created two basic ballot measures, one on all drugs, including meth and heroin and whatever, and one specifically targeting marijuana. Now, Mickey was here, or Mike Ross, what's the guy's real name, was here last night, and he clarifies that for him, the purpose of his two ballot measures are philosophical statements. They're explanations of his position and the issue of reform. Now, Mike Templeton there is very good friends with this Mike. Would you like to add or explain more on either of those so I don't misrepresent?
Well, no, you did well. We've collected about 243 signatures at the moment. We have no funding, but really, I support that initiative above all the others. And the reason being is our government has shown that they won't allow laws to stay the way they are, and they'll keep harassing the people. And we keep abusing ourselves. So I'm getting philosophical. So anyhow, so it's an 11-point initiative, one page. It's not 39 pages, it's not 22, it's one page. So I support it 100%.
I think it's a great place to start talking philosophically. I've come from politics, and between my wife and I, we've chosen to go into 5 different campaigns where we knew we were going to lose because we wanted to stand up for the things we believed in. 3 times for her, twice for me, we've chosen to stand up on our ideals for things that there was no way we were going to win. So when it came to coming to the political decision of what Safer Arizona should do or what I should do, I didn't want to have another Pyrrhic victory. Yeah, but we really cared. What was it that was going to win? And that's why I worked on the 4th ballot measure, which I would refer to, and that's I left one out. Let me get to that one then. Let me get to that one in a second. The other ballot measure that I was going to mention is brought for medical card patients by 2 brothers, this time from Apache Junction, Tim and Josh Cronin. They have a company called Independent Wellness Center. It's a patient certification facility in Apache Junction. And their assertion is that these medical cards, in the MMA, there's no requirement for a fee. The fees were added later. They don't have to be there. There's a surplus of this money that's going every year unspent because there's not a way to satisfactorily spend it. So let's remove the fees. And that's the purpose of their ballot measure. Like Mickey Jones, go ahead.
So there is no vehicle to move the money out of there, right? As far as the medical marijuana fund goes right now.
Beyond it's the upkeep and maintenance of the program. Right. There's nothing for the surplus.
Right.
Yeah. And I will tell you that in 14 legislative cycle, there were 4 very large and public attempts to plunder that fund, and nobody could put it together. Back then it was about $9 million, now it's over $11 million. That's just collecting dust. So the Cronin brothers have a very valid position. I've collected petitions, signatures for them, but I talked to them at great length. They are not wanting to put together a funded campaign. So I know I have hat hair, but my hat's off to them. Yeah, I don't think that's what you want to do is put together an unfunded campaign. Having spent a year with Safer Arizona doing that, I know that the victory of I did the right thing doesn't stop 16,000 arrests each year. So, MPP, I have a copy here. Well, besides the copies that are attached to the petitions, here's a copy that has some notes written on the side to make it easier to follow along. But basically, this ballot measure holds a couple of ideas. That individuals should be allowed to cultivate and possess marijuana for their own purposes. That the marijuana should be allowed for sale. And that the existing dispensary industry needs to be restructured in a way that I feel is more competitive, offering more business opportunity. Now, that point caused a whole lot of rift between NPP, the national organization, and the local dispensaries. Right now, if you own a dispensary license in Arizona, you own all steps of that marijuana from the time that it's planted to the time it's sold. The cultivation, the distribution, the manufacturing, if there is any, and the retail. MPP create a project that would break this up and create discrete licenses, 5 different types of licenses for those different fields. So the one that I left out is testing. Right now there's not a mandate for testing for the medical card program, so there's no official marijuana testing regulations set up. This program would create testing for adult use. People would be allowed to cultivate 6 plants per person at home, 12 per household. Be able to keep the marijuana that you grew, all of it. You'd be able to travel around with 1 ounce of marijuana. This does make a distinction between flower marijuana and concentrated marijuana. Lesser amount for concentrated marijuana. This provides protection for people's custody rights, for people's professional licenses. These were issues that we had fought for in specific. Right now, having marijuana accusation is part of what CPS uses as proof of child neglect to take people's kids away. So we were trying to get some sort of protection, not just against CPS, but in divorce courts as well. Right now, if a person gets arrested for marijuana and they have a professional license, such as a real estate broker, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, these licenses can be threatened. So there's protections in this for that. It does continue, it protects property owners, such as landlords or employers. They don't have to let you smoke. In fact, if you get, there's no protection in this, that if you should be caught smoking or smoking off time and your boss says no you can't, that you have any recourse. But this is the same with alcohol and amphetamines, tobacco. You know, if your employer does not want you to smoke, go into that discussion, that's his right to say no. If I don't want somebody to smoke in my house because I have to paint it when they're gone, I have the right to say no. So this MPP's ballot measure protects that right. It takes the funds that are collected, 15%, breaks them down into 3 different areas. 80% goes to education, that's 40% for adult daycare, and another 40% for maintenance of buildings and teacher salaries. Then there's also 15% which goes to public health costs. Yeah, I was happy to see the public health. Yeah, teacher salaries. Yeah. My wife and I are former teachers, by the way. We left teaching to do political work full time. She now has to take a day job, and I'm still floating by on people's good graces. But that's the presentation on those 5 ballot measures. Now, there were speakers. Oh, there's Jason.
Hello, Michael.
There's another ballot measure. I wouldn't want to mischaracterize it. Would you like to take a few minutes to present on it?
AZF, yeah.
The AZFMR.
Come on up.
Come on up.
Jason.
Give a little introduction to your role in the history of the community, like I did, and like she did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jason Hine. I started in the dispensaries in the first dispensary in Arizona, Arizona Organics, in 2012. Interesting experience. Got to see a lot as only being one dispensary. Learned a lot while I was there. Moved on to natural selections. And, really became involved in medical marijuana. Became very passionate about seeing patients getting access, seeing a lot of the things that are good and bad about the program, and decided that it would be better for me to leave the dispensaries and be more effective out in the community, educating people about what's going on in the dispensaries behind closed doors. These are the people that actually have written MPP's initiative, the dispensary owners, that are going to be taking care of our program for recreational, taking it over and running it. I guess the differences between MPP's initiative and ours is not really that much of a difference, because ours was, the regulatory structure was taken from MPP's. Just a few things were changed. Like Michael said, a lot of the consumer protections that he worked on, the whole team, the whole community developed, was not put into MPPs. So what we did was just took all the language that we had all worked on together and put it into it, and took the regulatory structure from MPP. So they're very similar, so they're kind of hard to argue against each other because they are so similar. The main thing is going to be consumer protections, post-conviction relief. That's a really big one. That's the most recent addition that was put into the final submission on the initiative. Outside of that, the regulatory structure will be different for businesses. There won't be a cap on the license like there is. There will be a cap at 1,600 retail marijuana establishments. Right now is it 9% for MPP, the 10% of alcohol licenses. And what title is it?
9.
Title 9, which is like 160.
Yeah, it's about 150, 160,
Right.
some number between those two, because I know that the AZFMR is talking all the licenses, and their number is 1,603 or something.
Right.
Is
So-
AFMRs, sorry Jason, is that distribution centers, 1,600, or is that distribution and new cultivation and new production?
All together 1,600.
So, okay.
Right.
Because isn't MPPs has unlimited production and cultivation as long as you keep moving up the scales?
Well, and that's the thing, you know, I still have my hang-ups with both of them, to tell you the truth. And like Kathy was saying, I think when I walked in earlier, you know, it's, you know, we're all going to have our differences and in a perfect world kind of deal. So,
I'm
yeah.
just curious. I'm not trying to point.
No, you're not. I
appreciate
this is
it,
good
you know,
stuff. Yeah. So on the regulatory side, it opens it up a little more, makes it a little more competitive. Both of them do allow the tiered licensing structure. So the medical marijuana dispensaries will have the highest tiered structure. Nobody will be, in MPP's initiative, nobody will be able to obtain that except for a medical marijuana dispensary. That makes it rather difficult to compete against, because the lower level tiers, you can't produce as much. It's based on the square footage or the amount you can produce, and it's basically the highest tier is going to dominate the industry on the regulatory side. That's how I look at the initiative, is in the two categories: the consumer protection and the regulatory end for the regulations for the taxation and sales of cannabis.
So both initiatives are really for safe access, really.
Yeah, they are. They are. I just cut right to it. I hear a lot of, you know, I think if a lot of people look at ours, and I hear this quite a bit, I would like to address it, is black market. That word is used a lot to describe the people that are behind mindful regulation and what we're trying to do. And that's probably the biggest argument that we hear, is that it's black market. These are the people that want to protect the black market. We want to open this up